Hello everyone, and thank you for clicking on this video. Let me start by introducing myself. My name is Martina Podboj, and I'm a linguist. I teach at the English department at the University of Rijeka in Croatia. And in case you didn't know, Rijeka is a beautiful port city on the Adriatic coast. I was also the 2017-2018 Wirth Doctoral Research Fellow. And it gives me great pleasure to be with the Wirth Institute once again, even if it's just online. So thank you very much for this opportunity to share my current research. So my main research interests are narratives, that is the sociolinguistic analysis of narratives and various ways that people use language and different linguistic strategies in storytelling. So this is a rather broad research field, which is called narrative analysis, and it is an interdisciplinary approach that is kind of at the intersection of sociolinguistics, discourse analysis, and ethnographic approaches to language research. And in a broader sense, narrative analysis or narrative inquiry can be understood as an interdisciplinary approach as well, because the notion of transdisciplinary approach, because the notion of narrative and its analysis can be a central topic of research for many other disciplines and fields within the humanities and social sciences. Now, recently, narrative analysis, or its linguistic branch, has been oriented towards storytelling and narrativity in various digital and online spaces that people inhabit nowadays, of course, through their everyday practices. Most notably, those are social networks such as Facebook, Twitter, various blogs, forums, and so on. This is in line with, of course, contemporary linguistic approaches that analyze language online, because, of course, the traditional opposition between spoken and written language that was and central focus of many linguists for a long, long time simply doesn't apply anymore. And what is interesting to us sociolinguists when we observe these practices is not only how language is used in digital contexts, but also what is the role of the affordances, that is features of certain digital platforms, that is how do they affect or shape narrativity and storytelling. What we can definitely see is that there are new genres, narrative discourse genres emerging, and this is because of the way we use online platforms for communications nowadays, the way we share stories and experiences. And this is changing, of course, as does language over time. And I'm sure you noticed yourself that there are changes in the way we are using social networks, in the way that we are sharing our experiences with other people. And certainly, new discursive genres appear as a result of these new ways that we communicate. And for example, one of these genres could be a tweets, Facebook posts, and one of the most interesting, for me at least, new emerging narrative genres are online earthquake testimonials. Now, let me give you a little bit of context and explain what actually motivated me to analyze this particular genre. So some of you might know that 2020 was, besides the pandemic, particularly challenging for Croatia due to the intensive seismic activity. So in 2020, amidst the lockdown and everything, Croatia was hit by an intensive series of earthquakes, and two of which were particularly devastating. So the initial one was on the 22nd of March. It happened in the capital, Zagreb, and it was 5.5 magnitude. Whereas the other more devastating one was on the 29th of December, and the epicenter was about 50 kilometers southeast to the capital in the rural Banija region. So the town of Petrinja, showed here on the picture, was the most hit, the most devastated by this earthquake, which was 6.4 magnitude. So you can see that they were quite apart chronologically, so March and December, but still they definitely marked the year for us in Croatia. Now, Croatia is not very active seismically, such as, for example, Japan or Chile, where earthquakes are a normal occurrence. Still, it does lie on several active faults, but people living in Croatia are not used to or not even prepared for such intensive earthquakes. And according to the European Mediterranean Seismological Center, there were more than 900 felt earthquakes within a 1 year period from the initial earthquake in March. Now, the reason I'm sharing this large number is, and of course, yes, you can see them on the map, the epicenters of these earthquakes and aftershocks, and you can see that they're mostly located around the capital, Zagreb. The reason I'm sharing this number is that it's worth knowing that these earthquakes were occurring during a lockdown, more or less intense or more or less strict throughout the year, lockdown caused by the pandemic, which caused, of course, additional anxiety and stress for people um, because during the lockdown they were supposed to stay inside their homes, while the earthquake, of course, signals you to get out of your house. So this was a particularly confusing and stressful situation for people living around these epicenters. Apart from the damage that was caused by these two devastating earthquakes and their subsequent aftershocks, there were many, many social consequences of this seismically active period. So, firstly, obviously, this situation resulted in a collective shock and trauma, which, of course, collided with the pandemic, causing extra anxiety and extra stress. Now, people's everyday conversation during this year have been severely imbued with stories about these earthquakes, right? For example, narratives of personal experience of the earthquakes, stories, people talking about comparing earthquakes of different magnitudes that they experienced, different intensity of earthquakes, about stories about the damage on buildings and houses. But additionally, other discourse domains such as media discourse and political discourse, they have also been saturated with the various aspects of earthquakes and seismology. So not only was there, or still is, the omnipresent COVID discourse, but there was also in Croatia this earthquake discourse, very, very present in every public domain possible. Um, Now, one digital platform that played a crucial role during this time was the Lastquake app, which was developed by the European Mediterranean Seismology Center, which is an NGO based in France. And so this app was designed by them to collect, rather crowdsource data from earthquake witnesses through their reports and comments. So the platform basically enables anonymous reporting on witnessed or felt earthquakes, and this can be done with or without leaving a comment. Then the seismologists use these reports and comments to triangulate them with other data sources about earthquakes to determine the earthquake location and intensity. And in Croatia, during this 1 year period that I'm observing, so 1 year from the initial earthquake in Zagreb, people were using the app to follow and report earthquakes very, very intensively. Okay, so there have been hundreds of thousands of comments and reports left on the platform, which is not a very typical intensity or activity for the app, which surprised this organization. Um, the thing is that the increased usage of the app frequently resulted in crashed servers, and it slowed down the app. So this was another topic that was frequently discussed in the media, that intense comments are flooding the app and crushing the servers. So let me illustrate how this app works. So if you have the app installed, you can see new earthquakes around the world occurring, and if you felt any of the earthquakes, then you can click on the earthquake. So for example, in this case, it was the 2.7 earthquake in Croatia. So once you click on it, you can enter your location. And here you can already see that 150 people commented on this earthquake already, which happened 26 minutes ago. And then you can write your comment. Um, Additionally, you can share a picture or a video that describes your earthquake experience. Before you leave the app, it asks you to click on one of these pictures that best describes your experience of the earthquake, right? And then the seismologists use this data from users to determine, of course, they use other data as well, but they use this, this helps them determine the intensity of the earthquake and the earthquake precise location. And here are the comments that other users have left, so you can scroll them and you can see that there are shorter, there are longer ones. Some are written in English, some are written in Croatian. This is another very interesting topic for linguists to explore. I'll talk about this in a moment as well. So yes, as I said, this app was so intensively used during the set period that this activity kind of intrigued me from a linguistic point of view. So I decided to look into these actual testimonials and to explore them a little bit from the perspective of narrative analysis. So, which is actually the current research project that I'm working on. So my aim is to investigate narrativity in these comments about felt earthquakes or earthquake testimonials online. And the data that I'm using are the comments left on the last quake app within this 1 year period. I also reached out to EMSC, and they have generously synthesized data for me and the comments for 32 representative earthquakes. So out of those 917, I selected 32, and this makes up to over 30,000 of these testimonials that I'm now currently analyzing. So when I say that I want to explore aspects of narrativity, here's a little bit of context. So traditionally and even prototypically, we can say, this is speaking from a sociolinguistic perspective, of course, a narrative is some kind of story that recounts, in which someone recounts their some kind of extraordinary past event that is worth telling. Okay, so this event is typically kind of linear, so the story is linear. It involves some kind of a temporal juncture, a complication, so this is the extraordinary part that is worth telling. There is some kind of rupture in regular state of affairs. It frequently involves participation of other characters or social actors, and there is usually some kind of resolution at the end or some moral of the story, right? And we as social beings share these types of narratives to each other on a daily basis. So from that perspective, retelling your personal experience of an earthquake definitely fits into this traditional narrative paradigm. However, recently, linguists also started recognizing other less extraordinary, quote unquote, stories as narrative formats or narrative genres that are worth analyzing as well. So those are sometimes in the literature referred to as small stories, as opposed to those quote unquote big stories. These small stories are brief, they're mundane, some kind of ongoing exchanges that are less monologic, and they're constructed usually equally by all of their interlocutors. So, for example, small talk, talking about the weather, giving instructions, and so on. And while they seem mundane, they have an important social function as well as their linguistic kind of logic in the way that they are organized. And of course, when we talk about the online context, we can see that these two tendencies of storytelling kind of interact in various social networks and other online and digital contexts that we inhabit nowadays. And for example, Facebook posts, tweets, and so on. And these social networks and their affordances have a built-in logic and a sort of economy of breaking news. So a preference, for example, to share your experience immediately, right? So recency of posts, sharing live, those are important features for social networks and online storytelling. And as a result, we have these condensed narratives rather than full long stories, such as the ones in traditional narrative analysis approach. So I will now show you some examples of these earthquake testimonials that I'm analyzing, and I will categorize the most interesting tendencies that stand out. Um, Starting with brief, referential, or evaluative reports. Uh, you can see the examples here. So as I said earlier, some comments are written in Croatian. For those, I provided the translation in English for you, but some are written in English, and those in English I present in their original, so I did not make any corrections or adjustments. So this is the original from the app. So you can pause the video to kind of read through them a little bit. Of course, the logic of reporting on these earthquakes on the app requires brevity and some kind of factual description of the experience of the earthquake, such as how long it took, describing the intensity, shaking, sounds, time, location. So many comments are such brief reports. So, for example, it lasted approximately 3 to 5 seconds. I felt it in Bosnia and Herzegovina. It woke me up at 6:25, right? So these are like really factual, kind of objective comments about the earthquake. But then there are also comments that are also very brief, very informative, but they're more on the emotional response, on the side of emotional response, rather than objective kind of features, physical features of the earthquake, such as how long it lasted. For example, brutal. My walls have cracked. Terrible, 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 and terrible. Okay, so these are the briefest kind of comments, and these types of comments tend to be the most numerous ones in the corpus that I'm looking into. So they are up to 2 short sentences maximum. And what is interesting that a lot of people write lengthier accounts that include at least one temporal juncture, such as these accounts here. So we see that apart from a referential report, again, they often include a more personal, more emotional response to the earthquake. And in these types of comments, the temporal sequence is very frequent, very kind of important and emphasized. So the temporal sequence goes, so state before the earthquake, description of the impact of the earthquake, and then description of moments after the earthquake. For example, this one woke me up. It knocked down some roofing tiles and broke my toilet seat. Scary. Or it woke me up. Everything in my room was shaking and it lasted for quite a while. So you see this temporal juncture. It woke me up. Everything in my room was shaking. So this is the rapture and normal state of affairs. There are lengthier ones as well. For example, this is the first time I experienced this ceiling light started shaking. You could hear glasses clinking against one another, and it all lasted only a few seconds. My heart is still pounding too fast. It all happened around 6:23. So it's a combination of factual kind of description of physical attributes of the earthquake, if we can say that, and the more emotional response to the earthquake, the shock that occurred. There are even longer narratives, such as this one, which would fall neatly into the category of canonical narratives that are described to the traditional approach to narrative analysis. So I will leave this one for you to pause the video and read it for yourself. It's a very detailed description of the experience. To me personally, the most intriguing are the meta testimonials, right? Those types of testimonials that emerged over a long time of seismic activity and intensive usage of the app, in which, besides reporting on their experiences of earthquakes, people started, express support, seek spiritual solace, pray, joke, and of course, troll. Wherever there is an online platform, there is going to be trolling, or simply making unrelated comments. So we could say that these comments do not refer to a specific earthquake, but rather about how people feel about the fact that there are so many frequent earthquakes, that there are so many out there. Also, we can see the level of stress and anxiety of people experiencing the earthquakes. So I can see people sending support to others. So we get the sense that everybody is reading through these comments, right? Because why writing that you send your support to those people in Petrinja if you don't expect that somebody from Petrinja will read this, right? So we can see that the kind of the change in the initial usage, the reason why people would use the app initially, right? Or for example, this one, I wanted to stop. Tensions are high. My nerves are doing the can. It's a little bit of, joking, as well as the usage of emojis is very interesting as well here. Hang in there, people. Stay strong, Croatia. Or hold on to your panties. And there are also, of course, trolling comments, such as this one where a person is selling their car. There are also many rude and impolite comments where people fight. I decided not to include them in this presentation, but there are really a variety of interactions, actually. Even though the app is not, the affordances are not designed so as to allow for interaction in a way that, for example, social networks or forums do, but there is interaction. People are commenting and responding to each other comments sometimes as well. And the most probably the most funny ones are comments calling for people to stop commenting. So, namely, as the earthquakes progressed, many people in Croatia use the app, and what happens is the app would send out a notification for even minor seismic events. But you don't have to, of course, comment on it, especially if you didn't feel this earthquake. But because apparently people in Croatia were so focused on earthquakes, they felt even, or maybe they didn't feel them, but they definitely comment on the smallest, the most minor seismic events. And as a result, many users started fighting with other users and commenting where they would call people to stop commenting. So, for example, this when people get serious, you write hundreds and thousands of messages for small earthquakes. Or EMSC will go nuts again because of us Croats, but this one managed to wake me up too, even though I never hear anything. So there are many thousands, even thousands of comments that call people to stop commenting, which is a little bit ironic. Anyway, so this was just a brief overview of this really rich data that I just started analyzing recently. I'm hoping to find out even more interesting things about these narratives about earthquakes. Definitely some general observations that I can list here for the end is that these earthquakes are definitely a type of an emblematic event which allow for users to share very condensed narratives on the app, so they don't have to go through a lot of details. Whoever is reading the comments will know what the the comment is about, right? Because it is the experience is shared and felt kind of collectively, right? And the logic and the affordances of the app uh, ask for factual reports and objectivity. However, over time, people started using the app for other purposes that I've described earlier. So, whether it's to express support, to pray, to joke, or to troll, or make completely unrelated comments, which baffled the seismologists because they were not used to so many comments of that nature. Uh, it seems that the app sort of morphed into a unique kind of online public forum, which was not the intention of the seismologist who designed it. But this is what happened in this specific uh, context where lots of earthquakes coincided with the pandemic and people being locked down in their houses. Uh, which is why these comments can be also observed as condensed narratives about extraordinary traumatic events, and they are very informative about the level of anxiety and trauma that people felt throughout this time. What's also interesting is the use of emojis, and the use of English. It seems that, but this still needs a little bit more analysis. It seems that the majority of comments that are written in English are written in the areas around the capital, right, in Zagreb, whereas more rural areas, for those earthquakes around the rural areas, there aren't as many comments in English, which is an interesting sociolinguistic fact. And the overall conclusion is definitely that online earthquake testimonials are a very unique narrative genre where recounting of extraordinary events, namely earthquakes, intersects with the smallness and the recency of sharing everyday life as stories in online context. If you are interested in narrative analysis or digital storytelling, online narrativity, you can check out some of these references that I selected here. And with this, I thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions about the topic, you can reach me out in my email listed here. Thanks again and have a great day. Goodbye.